Hey guys, so for the past probably a week and a half, maybe closer to 2 weeks, if not a little more, I have been getting questions about Charlie Kirk, which tells me I probably need to do another video. And there are some things I did want to talk about since I've heard about Tyler Robinson. So I have ChatGPT Atlas here, which I thought I wasn't going to use, but sometimes lately I've been using Safari and ChatGPT, so I figured, well, I might as well use it now. So I meant to type that in Google. So let me read this. So he was charged with aggravated murder. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. Of course. I already knew that was going to happen. We'll talk about that because this is very serious. I'll make a note of it, but this is really what I want to make this video for. And it's very important. So, I already knew this. I might have said in a previous, in one of the in the videos I was talking about this, I think there were 3, maybe there was 2, I don't remember. But I was talking about how Tyler would be prosecuted at the highest extent. Now, the reality is, but I'm not, usually, but in this case, I don't think that's going to happen. Usually what happens is prosecutors go for a death penalty, but what happens is they start reducing things, and in the sentencing there's bargaining and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that's going to apply to this, and I'm going to explain why that's a problem. So I already figured they were going to do a death penalty, but I already set, I think I did mention this before, I sent messages saying that there needs to be some sort of intervention with certain federal agencies to deal with this. And we'll go into that. So it says, recent court developments include the release of a redacted transcript from a previously closed hearing regarding procedure, like courtroom restraint and media acts ordered by a Utah judge. Interesting. Let me read that again. Recent court documents include the release of a redacted transcript from a previously closed hearing regarding procedural issues. Okay. I didn't know that, but there is definitely problems with this case. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but I'm getting to that. But there are problems with this case. It's very extraordinary, but like I said, I'll go into it. In December 2025, Robinson made his first in-person court appearance where lawyers discussed procedural matters. Robinson was living in St. George, Utah at the time of the shooting and had reportedly developed political views that differed from his family's, according to authorities. That also that kind of relates to what I was saying before earlier this year, how children, teenagers, and younger adults will go against the political views of their parents. And I already talked about that in my February 20th or 21st video. Yeah, I talked about all that. And I did make a mention of that. So make a note of that. So let's see if there's anything else in here. I do want to get a few articles. That's why I opened ChatGPT, but I'll go ahead and make a new tab here. Actually, I'm starting like this. This is what I like Atlas for. We can open new tabs, use ChatGPT. I like that. I should have done this video sooner so I could have got a more something more to build on. So I'm gonna have to dig a little bit in here. What was that one when he went to court? And there was that SWAT thing that was going on. It's a secret October court hearing. No, that's not it. There was one with that. You guys remember what I was talking about with the SWAT and the snipers on the roof and all that? Was that December 11th? It seems like it was further away. It was like this would happen in November. It feels like. I know it's CNN. It just showed up. Robinson is in trouble with aggravated murder and felony use of a firearm as well as obstruction of justice. This is gonna be another thing that's gonna appear. And there's like I said, there's a big problem with this. Witness tampering and commission of violent offense in the presence of a child. Presence of a child. Preliminary hearing begins on May 18th. I'm looking for a what was the you remember, you guys know, probably remember. No, I don't want that. No. He was transported by SWAT. Okay, here it is, December 12th. Okay, so it says local television station showed an armored SWAT truck in the convoy of vehicles that brought Robertson 22 to the courthouse about 4 miles from where Kirk 31, an ally of President Donald Trump, was shot dead on September 10th. And the thing that they did, I can't find it here, but what I had read on Facebook is that they actually had snipers on the roof, like protecting him. Now it doesn't tell us what SWAT, what. Still reading here. Since Robertson's first court appearance on October 27th. Yeah, that might be the one I'm thinking about. October 27th, because it did not feel as close as December. So let's look at that. Why can't that be default ChatGPT? Can I change this? The closed door hearing was held in Robertson's case to determine courtroom appearance conditions, like clothing and restraints, and the judge later ordered that transcript of that hearing be made public with redactions. Yeah, I'm trying to find October 27th. So what? Okay, so as I was saying before, I can't find it. You guys probably find it. SWAT. I don't know which SWAT we're talking about here. There's SWAT for different levels of government. There's a SWAT for I think SWAT for the city, SWAT for the county, SWAT for the state. I don't know if you have I think you have a SWAT for the city. It could be county though. Not entirely sure on that. And there's a SWAT for the federal. Given the fact that the FBI was involved in this, I would say maybe the SWAT is of the federal. It could be a mix of both. It could be county or it could be the federal. If it's a federal, then you could say it's under federal jurisdiction, which is what this case is supposed to be. And because this is very extraordinary because there's two different things going on, and the Constitution is not designed to handle such a thing like this. This is really pushing the Constitution to its limits. The problem is, here's the big problem. This is not a state. This is being go through a Utah state court. The problem is, you can't have this in a state court. The reason being is because, first of all, you can't have, and they're going to argue on this. The federal government knows this. The state, you have a problem because, think of this situation. Utah has been let's Google this. Oh, wrong thing. Utah is predominantly a conservative state. It's been a conservative state for, I think it's at least 40 years now. Yeah, I don't. I know that it was like last time I checked this a few years ago. I think it was like four decades that they've been conservative, and they've had conservative leaders. The problem here is that Charlie Kirk, given his position, he was a conservative um, leader. Might be going too far, but he was definitely had followers who were other conservatives, and definitely Utah followed him. So, with all that said, with the conservative, he killed a conservative. They got him on political views, and they have conservatives looking at this case because if they don't go for the death penalty, which pushes the courts to push the death penalty, that's not a fair trial. That's not due process. You're being forced because of political views. And the federal government, the Constitution, that would be a constitutional violation. Not only that, but you could also say that the verdict, if it's a death penalty, then you could say that there could be other outside sources, like the federal government, for example, that had information that could change the verdict, but could not be sent to the court because it would sway the way that conservatives would. And you wouldn't be able to have that information. You'll know that what the outcome is, but you wouldn't. Like I said, it's very extraordinary. So that's not a proper. This is a federal case. This should be federal because that's a constitutional violation. Um. So. And you could say, based on how political views sway the court in that case, or even a jury, depending on if they're. But it all depends. If they go for a death penalty, then that would definitely be a potentially grounds for a. The state courts and federal, they don't coincide together, but this is, like I said, this is definitely not usual. But yeah, you could actually charge well, you couldn't charge anybody, but you would. That would be a form of obstruction of justice because you can't have something that. It's just different. The federal court would definitely see this differently than the state would. State just sees, okay, this guy killed a guy and he gets punishment. Conservatives just say, well, he killed a conservative and that's why he should get a death penalty. So you got those two things going on, but the reality is, if this was in another country, because Charlie Kirk was very involved with the government of the United States, if this had happened in another country, one, the people in the country, they would either kill him and no one would get punished because no one would be able to find out who did it. And two, if it was like in an Asian country that aligned with the Western values, they would catch the guy, but only because of religious rights. Because, you had freedom of religion and you couldn't just be. So it would definitely cause tension between other countries and other governments. And the problem with conservatives is they think that America is the only country in the world that matters. Everyone else is. But in the real world, and this is what I'm talking about when you need to get the federal side in this, because conservatives in America, should we have it all about domestic and about what we see, and we sing free speech and all this, but when you're in another country, free speech has consequences. So it's not about. So it's like, what is justice in this case? is that giving someone the harshest penalty for being against a political view, which it just does look like it, or is justice, if this happened in another country, to make us realize that we're not the only ones in this world? Like, what's justice? And which would give him, and like I said in a previous video, he should get house arrest. Of course, it should be private after all this dies down. So, yeah, this is, like I said, this is a very extraordinary case, and the state and the federal government do not but doing that would give the federal government precedent of other cases that could be in the state, and they could, but still, it's based on the ideology. The courts shouldn't be looking at ideology, but that's like democracy choosing someone, and you could say, well, that's jury of your peers, but then, like I said, it's very unusual. So say it would go for death penalty, and the federal government would say, well, this would be house arrest because you have to charge them with something. And no, you couldn't do a state sentence and then do a federal sentence, because it's the harshest punishment gets carried out first, and then the federal gets carried out. But if you're doing a death penalty, then you wouldn't be able to do that. So, there's two different ways you can look at this. I personally, this is the only time I would say I'm on the federal government side on this. Because even though the Constitution doesn't permit it, and it's designed to prevent federal to get involved in the state affairs like this, this is one of those situations where this isn't just a random guy. The guy that was, Charlie Kirk was not a federal agent or an official, so he's not under federal jurisdiction, but at the same time, he was representing that movement within the government and overseas. So this is a completely different thing than just some random person having some political views or an activist in the United States holding up signs and all that. On that note, I do want to say, and I did say this in a previous video, that Charlie Kirk was doing something very dangerous. He was doing something very stupid. His debates were not, I mean, I guess someone had to do them, but his debates, his style was very dangerous, because a typical debate has a central point, and you have different sides debating on that. Charlie had the other person bring up a topic which forced him to answer, and he was expressing his own opinions and views through those answers. So he could be set up to say something which, you know, the United States might not like, well, not the United States, but the federal government would not like to be said, because it's dangerous for national security. It was a national security threat, even though he might not realize that. So Tyler, let me write that down. That's a good thing to talk about. So I'll talk about that eventually. So yeah, Charlie Kirk would be able to say what was on his mind in countries where you don't get really freedom of speech, which can conflict with foreign governments, especially in the Middle East or in China, especially if you're have Christian views. These can be overlapping, and you could start a movement or rebellion which is out of control of the federal government. So the federal government saw him as a threat. I'm talking about the United States federal government. So they saw him as a threat, but they couldn't do anything about him. So what do? Then Tyler comes along. He takes care of it. And now the federal government hasn't. They have to benefit them. It would benefit them to be on Tyler's defense. And that would, because Tyler carried out something that the federal government wanted to carry out, but they couldn't carry out. And Tyler did not wake up. I doubt that Tyler thought about all this. He didn't wake up one day and say, hey, let's put the federal government in an existential crisis where it conflicts and creates something that's, what's the word, not controversy, but what's the word? Starts with a C. Not contradiction. It's a it's what is that word? Let me Google that. I don't know how I'm going to answer this because I don't even know what I'm really searching for. Oops. What word is like controversy but isn't called that? Is that... It's when one thing goes against another. Not a contradiction. It's one agency goes against another. Two things go against each other. And they're leading... Paradox. Paradox, yeah, but there's a very specific word for it that I'm thinking of. What is that word? It's not contradiction. Let's see if ChatGPT knows what it is. Tension, paradox, duality. Not controversial, not contention, not... I don't know, guys. Post it in the comments. I thought of it earlier today, but I can't remember what the word was. the word was used before in my life. It was like controversy, controversial. Maybe it is controversial. Um. Anyways, so what I'm trying to say here is you've created a situation where you took it upon yourself what the government couldn't do themselves, but you did it anyways, and you've created something that the Constitution does not have any words for, and you didn't think, and Tyler did not wake up thinking, well, let's put the government in this position. Definitely not. And but the other thing I wanted to say was the way that Charlie did debates was generally stupid, honestly. I know one guy. I don't remember. Let's find his name. I used to watch this guy's videos, and I do like how this guy talks. If there is one debate I do like, and I don't like debates, it was this guy's. It was the guy who said, "Prove me wrong." He would bring up something, and he said, "Prove me wrong." See, he doesn't have the burden on himself. It's the burden of the person who's trying to prove him wrong. Where Charlie was, anyone could. It was like Charlie had to prove everybody wrong, right? So that put him in a bad position. So let's. I think I can do it here. What was the guy's name who went to colleges who said, "Prove me wrong"? You think of no, it's not Charlie Kirk. No, he didn't do "Prove Me Wrong." It was someone else. It wasn't Charlie Kirk. The guy who... Wait, was it Charlie Kirk? Hang on. Really? Then why did he change his... If that's Charlie Kirk, why did he change his setup? He had a better setup. That was Charlie Kirk? Oh. Who was that? I guess it was Charlie Kirk. He looked different. Although now that I think about it, he does look... Yeah. Was it really... Yeah, this was a better setup for his debates. Yeah, it got stupid when he put other people in charge of his questions. Why would he do that? I mean, if he knew how to do debates and he understood how to do them and he understood that side of things, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. I like those. Like I said, I did like him. I just didn't know that was Charlie. Yeah, they're like two different people. Ruby wrong table. Alright. Yeah, when I was looking at his videos and he went to this ideological thing where everything was about his own expressions and everything, that was when things... I didn't like that. Oh, Steven Crowder. Yeah, I was reading her name Crowder, and I was like, that sounds familiar. So, yeah, Steven Crowder. Oh, changed my mind. That's what it was. Changed my mind. Yeah. Weird how that, when I said prove me wrong, it was Charlie Kirk. Yeah. Yeah. I like Steven Crowder. Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of. Yeah. Him. I like his setup. He says, right, you're right, different setup. This guy, the guy you're thinking of, Steven Crowder, he's the one who went to college campuses with a table that literally said, change my mind, and invited long, open-ended debates with students. That format is very different from Charlie Kirk's later rally style or moderated events. If your memory was of someone sitting at a table and letting anyone argue freely, Crowder is the correct name. Yeah, definitely. I preferred Steven Crowder over Charlie Kirk. Uh, had So I said I preferred his style because he had the burden on the person who wanted to challenge Steven Crowder instead of Charlie Kirk, which was the person bringing the topic, and Charlie had to express his views. Two different sides of the spectrum. Crowder's change my mind format shifted the burden of proof. If someone sat down, they had to argue a position strongly enough to change his. That does a few important things. It filters for people who actually think, not just react. It forces challengers to own a claim, not just poke holes. It keeps the exchange closer to a good faith dialectic instead of a performance. Charlie Kirk's campus style, especially later, was different. He introduced the top. No, he didn't introduce. No, Charlie didn't bring the topics. The other students would bring the topics. So wait, what is he saying? Charlie Kirk's hymns especially was different. He introduced the topic. Who's he? Is it talking about Charlie or is he talking about Steven Crowder? Wait. Because Steven Crowder brought the topic. He carried the framing. Students mostly reacted to his positions. That naturally turns rhetoric and optics, not inquiry. It's persuasive, but it's not the same intellectual exercise. Um, I said, in one word, who is he in the sentence? He introduced the topic. No, I mean, who are you talking about? Charlie or Steven? Charlie, he didn't introduce the topic. The students would bring the topic. I don't understand what it does. He was known for that. People would bring topics. It was Steven Crowder who would bring the topic, and then they said, "Change my mind." So yeah. Anyways, you guys know what I'm saying here, and this became a international thing where the state sees the country, state, nationalists see one side, and those who actually know how the world works on the grander scheme of things sees that and what would happen if he was killed in another country. Because you charge the federal government would, of course, that brings another extraordinary thing for the federal government. They usually don't. They don't do. I don't know. Federal cases do not really become public. I'm not aware of any other case like that where it can't really go. It can't go to the state, and it challenges how the feds would do things. Like I said, it's very extraordinary. This is not usual. But things that are unusual sometimes do happen, and this is definitely one of those cases. Um, so yeah, I'm, I mean, I gotta be on the side where, you know, bring it all out. Say, of course you can't bring it out to the public until much, much later. It has to be redacted. There has to be information that can't be released. Or we're causing uproar, and people say, well, the federal government is trying to take control in all this, and conservatives would get mad about that. So yeah, it's so crazy how to handle this. But I'm sure that the federal government knows that, and they weren't really expecting that to happen, but I assume that they didn't expect that to happen, because this puts them in a very challenging predicament. I mean, it's kind of like it's like a positive plausible deniability, or would it be plausible accountability in a way? Because conservatives still blame the federal government for what has happened. If they give them house arrest, then that would be they were behind that, yeah. But you could also say, well, the federal government also partly say, well, Tyler was just doing something the federal government wanted him to do. So then there's that. So it's like federal accountability in that case. You couldn't really deny that. Both could be true at the same time, yet equally at the same time, one of them could be true and not the other one. So it's a mess. Definitely. Got a notification on my phone. But yeah, I did want to talk about that because people will bring it up, and I was like, well, that probably the sign that I need to do another one of these videos. So I'm gonna check GPT here, ChatGPT.com. Am I logged in? I can't tell. I don't know. Well, I'd have to be because default ChatGPT does not put 5.2. I wish there was a way that we could just log off or mimic it being off. Where? Okay, I'm in my settings. Oh, see that you can see that right now. How do I log off? Log out. This will close any open windows. Okay. So, wait. Atlas can't work like that. You gotta have a ChatGPT account. Alright. Let me. Go into this. Gotta log in, and I'll go into Safari. Because that's the only thing I know how to do in this case. Because, yeah, it isn't going to work. Okay, Safari it is then. So, I got to get my thing set up here. Properties. Start page. Oh, it's going to make a really big window here. So let me shrink this down to, this is very small. I gotta adjust this. Turn that on. Close this. Move that. That's the best I can do. So I'm gonna go ahead and do. I'm just doing this because I want to know a simple question. What is that? No, I didn't go to that. Okay. Not exactly fitting in this window, but what can I say? This is just kind of off the top of my head of a question I want to ask ChatGPT. I asked default ChatGPT, as you can see, I'm not logged in. Which debate style did you like more, Steven Crowder or Charlie Kirk? Another personal opinion, I can break down the different debate styles between Steven Crowder and Charlie Kirk so you can decide which you might find effective or repelling. Crowder is known for his change his mind format, usually sitting at a table with a sign, stating a provocative position, and inviting passerby to argue with him. His approach is informal, conversational, and designed to feel approachable while also being confrontational. The format often lacks a traditional debate structure, no strict rules, moderation, or equal speaking time, leaning more on spontaneous interactions. Limitations. Not a formal debate. Critics say it's more entertainment than rigorous argumentation. Charlie Kirk style. Kirk's events often took place on college campuses with his prove me wrong approach. That's strange to me because I've never heard of prove me wrong. Because I thought it was change my mind. But when I was really changed my mind. Is that a Mandela effect? Engaging students in front of an audience and camera. His style blended prepared talking points, repetition of familiar lines, and identifying moments that could be clipped for social media. Some observers note that his interactions were less like structured debates and more like rhetorical showdowns, sometimes with leading questions or ambush-style tactics. Highly polished and rehearsed, great at creating memorable sound bites, effective at energizing his base. Often not a formal debate with equal ground and rules. Critics say tactics can feel like ambush rather than sincere exchanges. Very informal but rehearsed. Loose, no moderator. Loose, audience driven. How can you have a prove me wrong if you're bringing the topic, but the audience drives it? Charlie Kirk was the one who was driving it, not the audience. I don't understand. I'm lost on that. Loose, no moderator. Individual interactions. Charlie was the moderator in his structure. Focus, individual interactions, audience performance. Appeal, entertaining, low stakes, high energy viral moments. If you like more spontaneous, personable interactions, you might prefer Crowder Star. It feels like everyday conversation and can be relatable. Um, I guess in a way, the way I'm speaking about it, philosophically speaking, that Charlie was doing what I say that Crowder's doing, but no, I'm saying that they, from what I've seen on YouTube, the audience would bring up some kind of topic, and Charlie would pick out these random, well, they're not random lines, these rehearsed lines that he's done 100 times, reworded them, and played it out like that. That's what he was doing. Crowder was change my mind. He would say, "Well, change my mind." You know, I like Crowder's better. If you like structure, and I don't like debates, but the change my mind ones, they were more approachable. I like them. I guess there's people that would like Charlie Kirk's more than Steven Crowder's. I guess you're either or. I don't know. Post in the comments who you liked better. Keep it civil though. Although they weren't enemies, you know. So if you like structured arguments with prepared talking points in an audience, again, Kirk's style might appeal. It's crafted for rhetoric and media impact. Um, so yeah, guys, I just want to talk about that the federal thing, the implications of this, and the whole court thing with the state, and yeah, I hope that the federal, I hope that the feds can do something about this, where later on it can be revealed what actually happened, and they can use Tyler as an example of of things that exploits the vulnerabilities that Kirk had, and all that. And I hope that we can get to that point. But as the Constitution stands now, and as things are set up for the state, um, the feds could do something on their own, but constitutionally they can't. But if there's a way to do it, there's a way to do it. People a lot smarter than I am, with much more experience, a skilled lawyer, a skilled federal agent that they would definitely have to provide their own testimony on the behalf of that agency. And I wouldn't be FBI. If it was the FBI, there would be a conflict of interest between prosecutor and defense. They could do it, but it would be very extraordinary. But I don't think the FBI would get involved. This would be more of a CIA thing with foreign relations and all that. They would do that. And if it was a federal case, then it would just tell the judge they wouldn't have any outside involvement. It's not like you see with the president where it's all transparent. It wouldn't be like that. It would be private, very locked down, like the Supreme Courts do, when they ever hear things and give an opinion. It'd be like that. So they would tell the judge, hey, we can't reveal this information to the public. It has to be revealed at a certain time and place. And it would go like that. It would be very different from the state. Although it does sound like the judge knows that, and they're doing redactions and talking about previous hearings and making sure that certain information does not get out. So it does have that sort of thing, which is good. I didn't know that. But yeah, definitely not usual in the slightest. So, guys, I'll end it here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I don't know what I'll be talking about next. I I do have. It's like every video that I've been doing lately pushes me into doing a federal video. What just happened there? What? I don't know if you guys saw that on camera, but I saw this window just overlapped a little bit on the on my yeah I just saw it blip there for a second, then I clicked on it and then went back to having that little smidge of gap between my screen. I don't know what that was about, but anyways, I will do probably a federal government versus my United States government video, and I talked about it in my last video. I do want that one to be one of the best videos. You know, there's a lot of good ones. You know, I like the Yu-Gi-Oh one that I did on September 1st. I like that one. I like what was it, the June 9th video that I did, you know, when we found out about Jake Lloyd. I like that video. There's a few really good ones in these. Of my, I think it's been over 210 videos at least that I've done. Within 1 year, I've done 210 plus videos. So yeah, there's a few good ones in there. So yeah, I just want to talk about all that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Actually, let me go through here and see. There's gonna be a few good ones. I think you're gonna really like a few good ones. There's three on here that there's two in here that I really like. The federal government one, and then there's another one that's gonna be really controversial. People are gonna hate it, but I'm gonna make it because I like that. I like that one too. So, anyways, I'm just rambling on at this moment. So, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey guys, so I'm adding this to the end of the video. Think of this thought when you think about all this coming together. After you watch this video, you think about it after a while. I want you to think of this. What do you want the reality to be? Do you want the reality to be where the state domestically says, well, this guy killed a person and he should be charged with murder like anyone else? Or do you want the reality to be the greater picture that the federal government would understand and see that the real world wouldn't, you know, they have different interpretations of what they would do, and inevitably, someone would eventually kill them. I mean, what do you want your reality to be? To realize that, or to be in the state where they're oblivious to that, or they don't account for it because that's not how the state court works? Well, any court in U.S. law doesn't work like that. What do you want the reality to be? Be thinking about America and everything like that? Or do you want to think about the outside world? Like, what do you want the reality to be? One or the other. And that's the difference between a house arrest of undetermined infinite amount of time or a death penalty. And those are completely different on the spectrum. And state law does not have, or any even U.S. law doesn't have a house arrest. That's only for low offenses. But was it targeting only? You could also ask yourself this: was it targeting only Charlie? Was it going to go after other people in this conservative group? You could also answer that question. So I like to see the bigger picture of it myself. That's why I would say, like I said before, I'm 100% on Tyler's side on this because it reveals the gap of American understanding from an perhaps from average level, but it's definitely in the politics of conservatives that they don't understand this. It's like the outside world only revolves around what we do, and that's not what is going on. That might have been true back in World War II and a few decades after that, but in the modern day, what's stopping us from getting along with everybody? I mean, why are we not learning about outside perspectives? You know, we're the lowest in the world. Most countries know multiple languages. They know at least three. I only know English. I was only taught English in school. Although when I was much younger, like I forget how old was I. Maybe 3 or 4 years old. I learned a little bit of Spanish. I was in a Spanish class, but as far as grade school goes, I didn't learn any Spanish or French. So, you know, so it's a reflection of what we should be in the future, portrayed today. Because also think of it like this: if people don't learn this is a very important lesson. If Americans don't learn this now, they're going to have someone else do it later, and they're going to start saying things, and they aren't going to realize what they're saying, and then it's going to be a whole big thing again. And then you just repeat this cycle over and over, and no one learns anything. And they say, well, it's just someone just got murdered, and they should be charged with a crime for criminal stuff. Like, you know, you got two realities here. Which one are you going to follow? So, think about that. So, I'll end it here, and yeah. So, see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.